Well, first, so you want a comment
On that.
on these two bloods here?
Yep.
And the blue up there?
Right.
Well, there's still, I mean, it's almost like sort of drying a mud puddle. There's going to be areas that are the last ones to go. I don't think there's anything really significant of why that's there, or that it's, you know, that it's going to be there for any length of time. I fully expect over the next couple of years that will shrink and disappear, as will you know, most of these areas up here. So I don't think either of these are issues. I think, like I said, I think it's just the last remnants of the plume that are going to disappear. This area up here, it just so happens that that's extraction well EN 284. That just happens to be a really, really good place to extract contamination. Marv?
That's my house.
It's right behind your house, exactly.
I was going to point that.
There's a geologic feature there. It's called an ice block depression. You probably all, or you may or may not know, chlorinated solvents are heavier than water, so they sink, and that's why they get down into the deeper portions. When the glaciers retreated from this valley, an ice block was left there. There's a few other areas on site, but an ice block was left there and created a depression in the bottom of the aquifer. So as I said, so you have these high areas that are dry. You also have low, deep areas, like this ice block depression, which happens to be right there behind Mark's house. And since the contamination was on site, the contamination flowed off site down into that depression, almost like a sump in your basement if your basement floods. So it's not, you know, it's not ideal that it's there across the street, but it is one of the most critical extraction wells that we have to have effected this cleanup that we have so far. Once we started that, was one of the first things we put in as far as the accelerated program. Once we put that in, that probably had as much to do with breaking up that first part of the plume as the other extraction wells. And operating that until such time as we can get it to a point where we don't have anything flowing across, operating that well is pretty critical to making sure that this doesn't come back.
Another thing, with 10 years worth of this data, I mean, you must have a very good idea of how much actual solvent, pure solvent, was spilled. I mean, it must be, you know, it's relatively easy to calculate, or within.
Well, it's actually.
How many thousands of gallons do you think of TCE and TCA were spilled on this ground to cause this?
So, well, it's virtually impossible you can't really go back and calculate how much it was. I mean, so far we've extracted, since we started extracting.
To create this type of a spill, how much would you have to spill on the ground to do this today?
Yep. Since we started extractions in 1979 and removal of some of the source areas, we've gotten rid of a little over 820,000 pounds of solvents.
820,000 pounds.
Right.
Which is an expansion, because they supposedly only spilled 73.
12 pounds a gallon.
About, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, roughly to make the math easy, it's at 10 pounds a gallon.
So what, 40,000 gallons?
No, we're somewhere closer to 80,000 gallons.
80,000 gallons of solvent.
Right.
How much remains?
Don't know.
I mean, you must be able to calculate, have some rough idea. You're shooting in. How much remains under the plant? You have absolutely no idea. If you got half of it, a third of it, most of it, that 80,000 gallons, what does that represent over the total?
It's really impossible to say. I mean, you can make some like rough guesstimates of what might be there. We have some. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there are numbers of how much is remaining in the plume area, and they're just ballpark estimates.
What would those ballpark estimates be?
Again, I don't have off the top of my head.
No idea.
When
You
I
have no
look at-
idea how much remains under the plant.
When I look at the numbers over a 20.
That extraction well that you just told Jim, is that the one that's behind building 18,
Injection well.
injection well?
That is behind.
On the
I
right-hand
think I'm
corner.
pretty sure it's 18. It's right about right about there. Right there. It's right next to that building.
And then that pushes it through my building to the extraction well.
No, it actually pushes it. But most of the contamination is right along the railroad there, and then just on the north side we have a line of extraction wells. So the idea is to push it toward those wells.
Oh, so you're pushing it north.
Mostly, yep. Frank, oops, sorry. Didn't mean to turn your eye.
Could you go back to the slide that showed the soil vapor, please? I don't think that was in the report.
The soil vapor plume, the colors,
Yes.
or the mitigation area. That one?
Yes, that one. Could you just say what the concentrations are, say in the dark blue and then in the green?
It goes from, well, the white 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and then all the way up to 50,000 to 100,000 in the purple. These are micrograms per cubic meter.
So how does that compare to the concentration in the groundwater?
Well,
As far as different laws.
You're talking about micrograms per cubic meter versus micrograms per liter.
There's no direct correlation between a groundwater concentration of contaminant and the amount of soil vapor. No one's successfully been able to.
There is a, by Henry's law, there is a theoretical relationship, but when you plot, it sort of falls along the line when you plot the numbers of what's in the vapor immediately over the water versus a water sample that was collected at the same time. There's natural scatter.
So I guess I'll ask a question differently, or ask a different question. What would the limit be for safe breathing?
The Department of Health, the air guideline is 5 micrograms per cubic meter.
Okay, so in that area,
For
is
TCE.
there anything that's 5 micrograms or greater
Yes.
Oh, yeah. In the soil vapor.
in the soil
In the
vapor?
soil
Right.
vapor, yes.
Okay, then the statement would be, you need to continue to use the mitigation systems, the vapor mitigation systems.
Yes.
Would that be,
We recommend that the vapor mitigation systems remain in operation, and it's part of the remedy. And even after, and at which point, we reach a place where the systems aren't, deemed warranted based on or recommended based on the soil vapor concentration, we would still recommend people to continue to operate them if they so choose because of possible radon. So, yes.
Is there any plans to put charcoal filters on those ventilation systems, so we
No.
ain't just putting it out into the air for everybody to
There
share?
was calculations done to determine whether the systems required treatment, and they did not.
They don't need charcoal?
There's DEC regulations. No, they were determined not to meet the charcoal.
So like my building, it's putting out 12,600, that's what the soil vapor intrusion level is.
Okay.
So it goes up onto the roof, comes outside into the air, where everybody's walking by going to work. Maybe I'd say it's 30 foot up. And on a foggy day, it's coming down, and it's on 24 hours. So there's 12,600 coming out of there. What'd you say the limit was?
The
5?
correlation between what's in the soil vapor and what's coming out of the vent isn't exact, but they were evaluated and the systems were determined not to need filtration, carbon filtration.
Wouldn't it, see, now in the very beginning, somebody told me that the reason, I asked him, I said, why do I need a ventilation system? And he says, well, our whole theory is no detect, what did he say there? How is that?
non-detectable?
That no exposure is the best thing. So 12,600, if they could put a little charcoal filter on there, just like they do with the groundwater and everything else, it saves everybody walking by. There's a couple thousand people working there of breathing. It'd be simple. About this much. Just like an air test is like what, 3,000?
But not really, because
When you're talking
because
millions?
when we did the ambient air study, we had sampling locations within the plume area, and we had one well outside the plume area, upwind, and it was indistinguishable. So in reality, putting a charcoal filter on it, you wouldn't notice the difference. You wouldn't be able to detect the difference. You would still see the same thing.
What do you mean?
Just that.
Well, like I know, because I have properties at the end of the plume and properties at the beginning of the plume, some of the properties didn't have it in the basement, but it was in the outdoor air.
There is a certain level in the outdoor air everywhere, in Endicott, in Niagara Falls, in Troy, in Rochester, everywhere, even on Whiteface
Because they
Mountain.
used the stuff like it was water.
Pardon me?
Because they used the stuff like it was water.
Well, I mean, it was an industrial chlorine, it was an industrial solvent. You know, we're an industrialized society, yeah.
But don't you think the people would like to know what the levels are?
In the air,
Yeah.
we did a study. We did a study. We know what the air
We
was.
did a study before you put the ventilation systems in.
No,
The
it was
canister
after.
they had in the air in my
No, it was
building
after.
was when they did their air testing. When they were monitoring the basement, they put the canister out back. And that's the last time I seen canisters for the outdoor air.
For the outdoor air, yeah, we did the one
Since
year
then, we
study.
got all these ventilations, like I said, 480 of them pumping it out into the air. You got the ground, you put another 500 monitoring wells, so it's like a Swiss cheese effect. It's gonna take the easiest path, you know that, right?
We had all those systems were in place in Acton when we did the ambient air study.
The canister, when they did my building, they put a canister out back, they put one on the bottom floor, they put one on the floor of the building. That was the only time I seen the canister. Do you have any plans on testing the air again?
We don't have plans, no. As I started to say, as a result of, the results of the 2005-2006 testing was that the ambient air in Endicott, right within the plume area, was indistinguishable from what you would expect in other areas of the state. It was compared to areas like Niagara Falls, a couple sites in Rochester, a couple locations in Rochester,
You don't
Troy,
think it would
and
make...
even Whiteface Mountain,
I don't care about Whiteface Mountain. I'm in Endicott,
right?
and I got a bunch of crap. I would like somebody to test the ambient air.
We did it in 2005,
You
2006.
can't breathe.
I wasn't here in 2005, 2006.
At the maximum level, when you would have expected just after the mitigation system started. And it was indistinguishable from areas where there was no
It's probably
no
the cheapest thing to do, Bill,
Alex,
okay, is test the air.
could we do it?
Like-
Yeah, we could.
Yeah.
I mean,
So why don't you?
When we do soil vapor intrusion testing, we always generally collect a outdoor ambient.
Yeah.
Because if there is some sort of outside source, we want to be able to evaluate that, whether it's impacting indoor air itself. The intent of the outdoor air study was to see if there was any cumulative effect of these 400 or so systems on the outdoor air, and they didn't see a measurable distinction between this community and other communities that don't have systems.
But see, I just feel that's the cheapest thing, to test the air. If they got the money to monitor the ground wells, we're not breathing that. We're breathing the air. And what's the big, I've been fighting for this air thing, I had signatures, you know how long I've been
yeah,
fighting for it. Since you've been here, right? I'm just asking the question.